Hi everybody, this is Kate Haley with Glazer's Camera here in Seattle, Washington. I hope you are all having a great day. We're excited to bring you a fun Q&A session with Mark Cruz, who's a senior manager at Nikon, to talk about some of the fabulous features of the new Z6 II and Z7 II. So we hope you'll enjoy the session. Over the past couple of days, I put together a few questions after doing some reading on these new cameras, and Mark is going to offer his input and information about how these new cameras might just be a fit for you. So with that said, Mark, just tell us a little bit about you and your role at Nikon, and then we'll dive into this Q&A.
Yeah, my name is Mark Cruz. I'm a senior manager here at Nikon, and I'm in charge of the launching of DCIL products. That's our digital camera interchangeable lenses. I get to work with these great cameras such as the Z platform, and I get to see it before it comes out to the general public. So I get to work with toys, talk to the engineers, working on launching it on our websites, and I'm really happy now that we've hit our launch date last week that we can finally now talk about these products to the general public and get the information out there, and because there's a lot of great things in this new iteration. So let's get right into it.
All right, awesome. So I did some reading on a few things, but I would love for you to share maybe one or two of what are the biggest things that are new in across both models, that if you buy a Z6 II or a Z7 II, what will the people who get those cameras, what are the highlights, maybe the one or the two key elements that are going to really draw people in?
Okay, well, first I'll just tell people that are new to the system, that are maybe looking at our entire lineup, how it actually goes. So in our full frame lineup, we have the Z5, that's our entry level point. We had made a video about that last time, a couple of months ago, you and I. And then we have the Z6 and the Z7. So those two came out a couple of years ago. Those were our first two Z cameras. They differ mainly from their sensors and the resolution. So the Z6 is 24 megapixels and the Z7 is 45.7 megapixels. The Z6 II and the Z7 II are basically successors to the original Z6 and Z7. So they have the same resolution in terms of the sensor, same ISO, but we've improved many things about it. Things that we could not improve from software or firmware. We've had to update the hardware of the camera. And since we came out with them, the major things that we've addressed are user feedback that we received, mainly to do with features like dual card slots. So, 2 years ago, now we're 2 years in, we have 2 slots, we have 2 processors, which give us more than triple the buffer. We have option for an external functional vertical battery grip, the MBN11, as well as autofocus improvements, more features in video, including the ability to record in 4K 60 and other cool features that we have in there. But those are the high-level features that we've addressed. Dual card slots, battery grip for the professional use, for the event photographers, they have that redundancy, but as well as autofocusing improvements, video improvements, among other things.
Well, that's fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about the dual XPEED 6 processors. So is this the first time there's been dual processors in one of these Nikon cameras?
Yes, this is the first time that we've put in dual processors. And the main benefit of the dual processors is the fact that we can now write and empty, the buffer quicker, especially because we're using CF Express cards. So the combination of the CF Express as well as the dual processors allow us to process data a whole lot faster. So what does that mean to the photographer? It means that they can shoot at bursts, say, for example, on the Z6 II at 14 frames per second in 12-bit RAW files. That's the same speed as our D6. So D6 basically capped out our frame rate as the highest we've ever done with a mechanical shutter. And we can now replicate that with the Z6 II at 14 frames per second. But we were now shooting at essentially 124 shots consecutively before that buffer maximizes. And in the case of the Z7 II at 45.7 megapixels, it's like a medium format resolution. We're shooting at up to 10 frames per second, up to 77 shots. So again, that's more than triple the buffer of the first gen. That's what the dual processors can do. It's basically processing that data a whole lot faster, tripling our buffer, and giving us faster frame rates than our previous generation Z6 and Z7.
So that is going to be a great benefit for especially people like sports photographers, like you said, event photographers, But I could definitely see that being key in sports because your goal is like to capture action or dance performances or things like that. So the dual card slots, so one is a CF Express and one is SD, is that correct?
That is correct, and it's that way for both of them. So when we released the Z6 and Z7, it was strictly XQD. With a firmware update, we made it compatible with CF Express, which is 4 times faster than XQD. Now with the Z6 II and the Z7 II, we've been listening to the community. We came out with dual card slots with the Z5, but both of those were SD. Now with the Z6 II and the Z7 II, we have both of them have CF Express as the main card slot, and the backup slot, the secondary slot, is SD. So it gives people a lot of great options because it allows them to use legacy cards if they already have SD cards. It allows them to access readily available SD cards. But the buffer and those frame rates and those buffer capacities that I mentioned there are only really realized when you use the CF Express. You know, they can write at 1,700 megabytes per second and clear out that buffer really quick. So all our tests are based on those, but it's great for the event photographers that have been screaming for a second card slot, even if it was just SD, and that's what we delivered. And the great thing about it is we have not changed the size of the camera. It's essentially the exact same cut and size and weight as the first gen, so you can use your same brackets. If you already have an MBN10 battery pack from the original Z6, Z7, you can still use that on here. I had questions about people using underwater housings, and they can still use the same underwater housing because it's the same form factor. So we were able to fit in that secondary card slot without changing the size of the camera.
Well, and like you said before, it's kind of the same package, but like the insides have been updated and improved, right?
Yeah, like as I said, the insides, but the physical features. One other physical feature that we had to improve on this is the contacts for the battery grip. So in Gen 1, it simply did not have contacts to communicate with a functional battery grip. That's why it was essentially a battery pack. It was providing extra power to the camera in the form of 2 hot swappable batteries. That's the MBN10. Now we have the MBN11. And this right here is what people have been clamoring for. It is the ability to activate shutter speed, aperture, ISO, joystick here at the back for the autofocus points, and have still a hot swappable front battery. So the cool thing about this, I've never actually encountered a battery grip like this before here at Nikon, is we can remove the first battery without interrupting the operation of the camera. So you always have a battery in there as a backup, so you can hot swap that battery at the front. Again, this is only possible because we had to do a hardware physical upgrade to give contacts to communicate with this battery grip.
So the Z6 II and the Z7 II, sorry, they have that newer, higher capacity battery. How many shots generally would you get on one, and then how is that increased with that new battery grip?
Yeah, okay. So versus when we came out with the Z6 and the Z6 and Z7 2 years ago, those batteries were rated CEPA ratings about 310 shots. And I mean, it's different in real world application, but now with these new batteries, which are the ENEL15C batteries that ship with the Z6 II and the Z7 II, those with the energy saving function here can achieve up to 450 shots per charge. In terms of video, we're at 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Okay.
So we have a lot of time. I think that's 105 minutes here we can shoot up to. So we can shoot for longer periods of time. I'll mention while we're on that topic that we also have other power options in here as well. In terms of powering the camera simply from the USB port. We have something called USB power delivery, and we introduced this with the Z5, but we have them now in the second generation of Z7 and Z6. We can power the camera indefinitely through the USB port.
And that's great for, I was going to ask about that, so you beat me to it. But that's great for people who are shooting video or doing time lapses or projects that would push the battery maybe to its limits a little bit. So that option is going to be
or
really
even
fantastic.
Doing something like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I'm coming at you from a Z camera, and I have it plugged in through the USB port. What we're doing right now is Zoom chats. I don't have to use my webcam on the laptop anymore.
Or what happens if you're on a Zoom chat and your battery dies partway through? That's totally happened to me. So the ability to run that through power is pretty awesome. So
Of course, of course.
I would love to talk a little bit because I read about some improved autofocus options. Could you talk about some of the new autofocus features and how it's even better than it was before? Because it's pretty great.
Yeah, the Z platform gives us the ability to do things we simply could not do with the DSLRs because we have on-sensor PDAF points, and they cover 90% of the frame. So whereas in a DSLR, the cluster of focus points would be right around the middle, with the Z cameras, we can get coverage right to the edges of the frame. And what that allows us to do is have different autofocusing methods, such as eye and face detect. Now, what we've improved in generation 2 of these cameras is we've allowed eye and face detect to be done in video, whereas before it was only a stills function, but we now also can do it in a focus mode called wide area AF. And what that means is that you can focus your eye detect in a certain quadrant of the frame. So in generation 1, you basically took the entire frame and it would look for faces and eyes within the entire frame, sometimes picking up on other people that you didn't want to pick it up. Now you can be more specific and intentional in your composition. Concentrate on where you want that face to be and let the camera figure out the eye only in that red box. So this has been a really welcome feature to some of the photographers that we have allowed to shoot the camera in pre-production, and they raved about this feature. So I'm happy to report that. We've also improved the implementation of something called subject tracking, which from Nikon users using our DSLRs is very similar to 3D tracking. We can program one of the function buttons to essentially activate the subject tracking, and the way it behaves now is very similar to 3D tracking on DSLR. You press the shutter release halfway, it activates, you let go, and it reverts back to wherever it was. So we're really happy about that, as well as the accuracy of the autofocus points as well.
Okay, amazing. Now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about something, because as we shift into all of these new camera options out there in general, a lot of people are switching to mirrorless cameras to create videos and film. So I'm curious about, one of the features I read about with the Z7 II is that it can now do 60p 4K footage. I read that that might be coming to the Z6 II at some point. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So these cameras were announced last week. They ship starting in November for the Z6 II and December for the Z7 II. Out of the gates for the Z7 II, it will have 4K 60p available in camera writing to the memory card. So that's 8-bit 4K 60p, and our customers have been asking for this. We've been offering 1080 120 in the camera right from the get-go with the Z6 and Z7, but people need that extra little bit of frame rate at the higher resolution. That's the feedback we've been getting. And so we're delivering that in the Z7 out of the gates, and that'll be at about 93% of the frame, so almost full frame FX. Now, with the Z6 II, we are releasing a firmware update early next year, around the February timeframe, in which we will allow people to activate 4K 60 as well in the Z6 II. That'll come at a DX crop. That'll be internal 8-bit written to the memory card, but that'll give them access to that frame rate as well.
Okay, awesome. Are there any other video-centric features that you think stand out?
Oh, very much
okay.
so. Yes, yes.
Can you share a few?
Here's one that I want to tell. We're really excited about this here because a lot of people that come to the Nikon system from other systems in the video community have a problem with muscle memory when it comes to the direction that the manual focus ring turns, simply because they're used to it turning the other way. And, you know, when Nikon came out with their lenses, it's basically you can program the lenses to turn one way or the other. We went one way, you know, a lot of different manufacturers went the other. We now are using these stepping motors, these fly-by-wire motors that allow us to do many, many things that we couldn't do in our DSLR system, such as reverse the direction of the manual focus ring. So if you prefer moving your focus ring in the other direction, it's a simple menu change and people can get over their muscle memory and just move the manual focus ring the way they want to. So we're really happy about that. This is exclusive to the Z6 II and Z7 II. Other video-centric features that we've put in here, as I mentioned before, is the ability to do eye detect in video, which was something that was exclusive to stills in generation 1. Yeah, among other things. So a lot of people don't know as well, we can do things for our lenses here in terms of the autofocusing speed. We can throttle or speed up the rate of focus. So if you want to do slow focus pulls, you can actually program the camera to be slower at focusing for video or speed it up. You can also change how quickly it manages erratic moving subjects. So if you want it to pick up very quickly erratic moving subjects, you can do that. If you wanted it to be a little bit more delayed, you can customize that all in camera, among the many other aids that it has. Focus peaking, zebra patterns, the various audio monitoring levels. I mean, we have audio monitoring for headphones here and a microphone jack here at the side. But in terms of video, other things that we have, I didn't speak about is the HDMI port, and that is the ability to get 10-bit output through the HDMI port to things like an Atomos Ninja monitor, through N-Log, or now we support HLG, which is our hybrid log gamma file, which is like a high dynamic range format. And now we also support 12-bit RAW through a firmware update, a paid firmware update. We've offered this before for the ProRes RAW, but I'm happy to announce that early next year, we will also have this available for the Z6 II and the Z7 II for Blackmagic RAW. So there's a couple of Blackmagic recorders that we support, and we'll be offering a paid firmware update for that for the Z6 II and the Z7 II. That will effectively unlock both ProRes RAW as well as Blackmagic RAW. For existing Z6 and Z7 users who've already purchased the ProRes RAW firmware upgrade, we offer it to them as a free update to activate Blackmagic RAW.
Wow, that is a ton of features for all the filmmakers and video shooters out there. That focus pulling trick, that sounds really cool. This sounds funny. I have an app that'll do that, but how amazing can it be to be able to program that in on your camera? All right. So we talked about a lot of different features. I have a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap this up. So I hear there's been some updates to the connectivity with the cameras to your Snapbridge app. Could you talk about some of the features and the benefits of this, these updates for folks who are maybe thinking about sending this over? Sorry.
No. The Snapbridge app is something that we offer both on the App Store as well as Google Play. So it's Android and Apple devices. And what it allows you to do is typically transfer images from your camera to your phone or tablet. It does this through either Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. It allows you to change the bandwidth between the two. Now, a couple of other things you can do is we've always been able to do this, is trigger the camera using your phone, but we've improved it with updates allowing you to adjust aperture, shutter speed, ISO, white balance, focus point, exposure modes, and all that. As well, in video, you can start and stop your video. What's new with the Z6 II and Z7 II is the ability to update your firmware through the app. So if you're out in the field and there's a firmware release, instead of having to go home, fire up your laptop, take your memory card reader, download it to the memory card and back into your camera, all you have to do, whip out your phone, it sends the firmware right to the memory card that's already in your camera, and you update it from there. So that's a great handy feature. We've produced a lot of major upgrades via firmware, corrected some bugs, and in real time throughout the last couple of years, introduced major firmware updates. So we're happy that does that as well. In addition, I'll also mention that when you get a Z6 II and Z7 II out of the box, it's able to wirelessly tether to your laptop or desktop, provided it has wireless capability, without any special cords, without any special software, immediately. So you don't need a $1,000 adapter. You don't need a cord. You can do it all wirelessly through the Wi-Fi in the camera and a small setup utility free setup utility from Nikon.
Okay, that's awesome. I also heard something about an extended shutter time as a new feature.
Yes. So that now, this is great because we came out with a astrophotography centric camera a few years ago called the DA10A. And in there, we released an option to shoot shutter speeds up to 15 minutes, so 900 seconds. And it's been a while, but this is the first set of Z cameras to be able to go up to 900 seconds. So that is great for long exposures, astrophotographers, people that want to do that kind of stuff, as well as several other shutter speeds below that. So it's not just 15 minutes, it's several minutes below that, 600 seconds, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
What we've also done for the people that shoot time lapses is we have an update in these cameras now that allow you to do time lapses, movies at the same time as interval timers. So what that means is you can put your camera on a tripod, let it shoot high resolution stills of your scene, but at the same time, it generates an MOV file right in camera to give you the time lapse of the interval timer that you just shot, as well as the high resolution files.
That's really great. So lots of really cool updates in that regard, for sure. Okay, I have two more little questions and then we're gonna wrap this session up. So before we went live, you showed this teeny tiny little remote. Can you tell me what that is and how people use it, or why people need that in their lives?
I needed it. I'll tell you why I needed it in my life, is that this little magical piece here plugs into the accessory terminal of your Z6 II or Z7 II. And the purpose of this is to do a few different things. Mainly, it can trigger a flash wirelessly. So we have an SB5000 flash in our lineup that is both infrared and radio. So we've had infrared communication for the longest time, many, many years, but now we can communicate via radio. The advantage here is distance, as well as shooting through barriers, and reliability. I can reliably shoot this outdoors in the sun. It won't get conflicted or confused with the infrared from the sun, but also I can shoot at farther distances, as well as have more groups involved. What other things this little adapter can do here is it can remote control other remote cameras. So I can use this as the commander camera, and I can have remote cameras as long as they all have this little transceiver here. And I can, every time I fire, it will fire those subsequent cameras at the same time. So imagine having a second shooter on a tripod covering a different angle, and it fires at the same time you fire. That's what this does. It takes no batteries. It's powered from the battery inside of the camera. The flash itself doesn't, it has the batteries to power the flash, but that's it. You don't need a separate adapter to plug into the flash that takes other batteries like other command or other radio systems out there. The other thing that this can do as well is if I put my camera onto video mode right now, this little device here will act as a tally light. So if I don't know if you can see that there, but it's lit up. And that'll make you understand that you're actually recording right now. You can actually program your Snapbridge app to start and stop the video on this, and at least you know that you're live once that's going. So it's a really handy little feature, and that'll be available at the same time as the Z6 II in November.
That is a really cool little device. I have used Nikon speedlights for off-camera flash for a long time, but always need some other kind of remote because I tend to use modifiers that sometimes block the optical sensors. So amazing.
Right.
So these are going to be in stores soonish. Can you just refresh us again on when the Z7 II or Z6 II will be available in stores?
Yeah, so the Z6 II will be available in November. Z7 II will be available in early December. So those are the timings of it. The battery grip we're also having available at the same time as the Z6 II as well. So that's the MBN 11, so look for that, as well as that WRR11B adapter that I just showed you there. There are a couple of there's a WRR11A, which is the 10-pin adapter that will go on things like a D850 or a D6 or a D5, D500, et cetera, et cetera. But we have the one here for the accessory terminal on the Z cameras.
Okay, amazing. So for those of you guys tuning in, it sounds like a good holiday present for yourself. I'm just saying. Or maybe someone in your family. We are getting to that time of year.
I'll tell you about holiday presents. The great news is from our lineup. Great news is about our lineup is that the Z6 and Z7 stay in the lineup. So we're actually going to have 6 cameras in the lineup. If you can include the Z50, our DX camera, under $1,000, then you have the Z5, which is our entry into full frame. You still have Z6 and Z7. So for the price points, you can evaluate whether it makes sense to you. If you want to get the dual processors, dual card slot, vertical battery grip, and all those other autofocus options that I that I mentioned there, then it might make sense to move up to the latest and greatest with the Z6 II or Z7 II. And they'll have all these choices. As well, we'll have these available with kits with the 24 to 70 f4. You'll save about $400 on the lens when you get it as a kit.
Oh, awesome. And that would be a great lens for most people to have. All right. Well, Mark, I want to thank you so much for your time and all of that great information. We really appreciate these collaborations with you guys at Nikon. It means a lot to us here in Seattle at Glazer's. So everyone who watches this, if you have questions about Nikon, please feel free to post those in the comments or give the store a call or come in and see us, and we're happy to help you. Mark, thank you again, and we'll bid you all have a great day.